Let's begin by understanding what exactly is federalism. And for that, let us go back to the contrast between Belgium and Sri Lanka that you must have studied earlier. Do you recall one of the key changes made in the Constitution of Belgium? Well, yes. It was to reduce the power of the central government and give these powers to the regional governments. Now, regional governments always existed in Belgium and they had their own roles and powers. But now they were given these additional powers to reduce the load from the central government. But the central government could withdraw these powers at any point in time. And it was in 1993 when this change took place. The regional governments were given constitutional powers that were no longer dependent on the central government. Thus, Belgium shifted from unitary to a federal form of government. If you remember the case of Sri Lanka, it continues to be, for all practical purposes, a unitary system. All the power and decision making rests with the national government. Although Tamil leaders want Sri Lanka to become a federal system. Now, since many countries have a federal government, many are working towards achieving that sort of order. What is it about a federal government that works? Well, to begin with, federalism is a system of government in which the power is divided between the central authority and various constituent units of the country. Now, usually a federation has two levels of government. One is the government for the entire country that is responsible for a few subjects of common national interest. The others are governments at the provincial, state or regional levels. They manage much more of the day-to-day administering of these places. Most importantly, both these levels of government enjoy their power independent of the other. Here are some interesting numbers. Though only 25 of the world's 192 countries have federal political systems, their citizens make up to 40% of the world's population. Most of the large countries of the world are federations. So now that you know how a federal system works, you can also see how different it is from a unitary government. Well, under the unitary government, either there is only one level of government or the sub-units are subordinate to the central government. In a unitary system, the central government can pass on orders to the provincial or local government, but that does not hold true in a federal system. Here, the central government cannot order the state government to do something. The state government executes its powers independent of the central government and is not answerable to the central government. Both these governments are separately answerable to the people. Let us look at some of the key features of federalism. To begin with, there are two or more levels or tiers of this government. Secondly, different tiers of government govern the same citizen, but each tier has its own jurisdiction when it comes to matters of legislation, taxation, and administration. So what does jurisdiction mean? It is the area over which someone has legal authority. The area may be defined in terms of geographical boundaries or in terms of certain kinds of subjects. Now, there have been two basic ways how federations have been formed. The first is when independent states volunteered to come together to form a bigger unit, so that by pooling sovereignty and retaining identity, they could increase their security. This type of coming together federation includes the United States of America, Switzerland, and Australia. In this first category of federations, all the constituent states usually have equal power, and their strengths are on par with that of the federal government. Coming to the second way of how federations were formed, this is where a large country decides to divide itself between the constituent states and the national government. India, Spain, and Belgium are examples of this kind of holding together federations. In this second category, the central government tends to be more powerful as compared to the state governments. In this type of federation, very often different constituent units of the federation have unequal powers. Some units are granted special powers. Well, coming to our very own federal government of India, we have just discussed how India's federal system was formed by division of power between central and state governments. And we also learned that the former holds more power, right? Well, let's discuss a little more in detail what makes India a federal country.
Tutormate. For more amazing video lectures, download the free app on Apple App Store or Google Play Store